hike the Appalachian Mountains. What came back isn't him. Written by Diet Pepsi B Word. My brother, Kevin, not his real name, I am trying to keep some anonymity, has always been outdoorsy. Growing up, he would wander off into the woods behind my parents' property and stay out there for hours. He said that being out in nature brought him a lot of peace. A few months ago, things kinda spiraled for him. He lost his girlfriend, his job, and his apartment within 6 weeks. He ended up moving back home with me and my parents to try and get back on his feet. It was hard to see him like that. I mean, he was never someone I would describe as an eternal optimist, but that little spark he always had was gone. This past spring, I found him sitting at the kitchen table in the middle of the night. He was picking apart a piece of cold pizza, and it was the first time I'd seen him almost eat something in days. I told him maybe he should get back out into the nature, into some hikes, or maybe do a solo camping weekend. I said that I had noticed he had seemed down lately, and maybe being out in the world could help him get back to himself. In the moment, I wasn't sure if he was really hearing me, but he took a bite of pizza, squeezed my hand, said he loved me, and went back to his bedroom. The next morning, he announced to my parents he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. My mom was hesitant, but Kevin told her that he knew enough about himself to know that sitting at home in his room was causing more stress than if he could go out and just be in the place that made him feel most at ease. My dad just said that, as long as Kev checked in every few days or so, he didn't see a problem with it. My dad pointed out that it wasn't like Kevin didn't have the experience. He was a Boy Scout turned Eagle Scout turned camping enthusiast. People do that hike all the time, Kathleen. If it were dangerous, no one would be bragging about it. I remember him saying those words exactly. I don't know why they stuck in my head the way they did, but maybe it was the way Kevin seemed to brighten up a little after my dad gave him blessing in a sort of roundabout way. The next 2 weeks were spent helping my brother pack what he would need, registering his hike, and buying a plane ticket to Georgia, where he would start his trip. The night he left, our mom was a mess. She kept fussing over him as if he wasn't a full-grown man. She kept asking him if he had everything he needed, and he just kept assuring her he did and would check in with us once he got to the trailhead. Looking back now, he seemed genuinely excited. If I had known what would happen, I would never let him leave. My brother called like he said he would, just as he was beginning his trip. He even sent a photo in our family group chat that showed him up against a backdrop of purple blue mountains and lush greenery. He had a thumbs up and his signature slightly off center smirk. He wrote, "Finally made it. Love you guys. Talk when I get better reception." Over the next few days, Kevin would send a photo or two, usually of his surroundings, but occasionally he would send a selfie with the caption, "Proof of life." But as the days wore on, we stopped getting updates as frequently. What was a text at least once a day became a text once every 3 or 4 days. My dad blamed it on spotty cell reception, which made sense. And it wasn't as if the messages stopped altogether, and from what I could piece together from his photos and short text bursts, he was making good time. It was around a month and a half into his trip when we realized it had almost been 2 weeks without any communication from Kevin. We called the authorities. We gave them all the information that we had, but based on what we knew, it was hard to say he was even missing. As far as the police were concerned, he had gone off-grid with the intent of going off-grid. Sending out search and rescue would cost thousands of dollars, and it would be a waste of resources, especially if there was someone else who needed it. They said they would put a notice out to the Ridge Runners, and if they saw Kevin, they were told to tell him to contact us. My mom was furious, but I couldn't necessarily blame the cops for the reason. We had no evidence to support that Kevin was anything but content out in the wilderness. A few days later, a text came through. Just a photo of a sunset and the words, "Everything is okay here." That began the new normal of communication with my brother. There would be long stretches of time where we would hear nothing, just long enough for my mother to start panicking, and then we would get a blurry photo and a generic caption like, "Look what I saw today," or "Wish you were here." One night, while going through the photos he had sent, I realized in the background of every shot from before we had called the police was a black smudge. It was too blurry to properly make it out, and it didn't seem to be an animal or something caught moving in the camera lens, but after the first photo he had sent after we thought he was missing, the smudge was gone. Kevin came home earlier than expected. He also hadn't told anyone his plans. One night during dinner, there was a loud, sharp knock at the door. My dad got up to answer it, and there was Kevin. His hair was long and stringy. He had grown a patchy beard over his cheeks and jaw. His lips were dry and cracked, and his gums were coated in a dried layer of blood. He was rail thin. He had lost at least 30 pounds, and he wasn't a large man to begin with. His clothes were filthy, caked in mud and debris, and his shoes looked like they had been worn thin at the sole. My mother made a sound almost like a yelp and rushed over to him. The smell coming off of him made me gag. It smelled like he had smeared rotting meat under his armpits. My dad just looked at him in shock. When he finally spoke, his voice was dry and raspy, as if he hadn't used it in weeks. "Mom." That was all he could say before he practically collapsed in her arms. I won't bore you guys with everything that happened after that. There was a lot of hugging, some tears, and then a very, very long shower. But something didn't feel right. Kev went to bed pretty much immediately after. He barely even looked at us. The next morning, he ate breakfast with a ferocity that made my skin crawl. He was gulping down huge mouthfuls of food, barely stopping to breathe. My mom just kept piling his plate with bacon, eggs, and toast. He stopped only after he had consumed a whole loaf of bread, 2 packages of bacon, and nearly 2 dozen eggs. I tried to ask him about the trip, tried to get him to say anything at all really, but all I got were grunts and uh-huhs before he lumbered back off to his bedroom. The next few days were more of the same. Kev eating an insane amount of food, sleeping for hours, and then mumbling his way through conversations. It took about a week for him to start communicating like a human being again. But even then, it was stilted, awkward, and unnatural. He's been home for almost a month now, and something isn't right. His voice, it changed somehow. It's still his voice, but it's like there's a second voice buried underneath it. Like someone is trying to harmonize while he speaks. He lumbers around the house, like his knees are locked in place, but he refuses to go to the doctors. The worst part is the smell. It still won't go away. No matter how often or how long he showers, he still reeks like death. I could have maybe ignored all of this, maybe blame it on him being isolated in the woods for weeks, but after what happened tonight, I couldn't sleep. That feeling of fear in my stomach I felt ever since he's been back hasn't gone away, and honestly, it keeps me up most nights. I was trying to will myself to sleep when I heard the back door creak open. I crept out of my bedroom and down the hall. From my viewpoint, I could see into the kitchen through the window into the backyard. I saw my brother, perched on his hands and knees. He was twitching wildly, like every muscle in his neck and head were spasming. He widened his stance and thrashed his head towards the ground and out of my line of sight. I was worried that maybe he was having some kind of seizure. So I ran out to check on him, and that's when I saw it. His head was buried deep into the carcass of one of our neighbor's cats. he was chomping down on its tiny body, blood oozing out between the gaps in his teeth. The thing had clearly been dead for at least a day or so. Its body bloated and its eyes were dull and hazy. Kevin reached inside the cat's body and started to strip off pieces of muscle and tendon, slurping them up the same way he had been eating our mother's cooking. Pressing his thumb into the thing's skull, he popped out one of its eyes and tossed it back like a grape. I ran. I ran back into the house and locked the door behind me. I was about to run back to my bedroom when that smell hit me. That horrible death stench that had been wafting around my brother. I opened the door to his room and inched a few feet inside. Wrapped in his bedding were the decayed bodies of 20 or so animals. Rabbits, mice, squirrels. I tried to run into my parents' room to wake them up to tell them that we needed to call someone. As I turned around, I saw Kevin in the kitchen window, his body drenched in blood. He was eyeing me through the glass, his head tilted at an angle that shouldn't be possible, the vertebrae in his neck strained underneath his skin. He lunged at the window and I screamed. My parents woke up then. They found me in the hallway, sobbing, sweating, shaking with fear. I told them what I saw, and my dad rushed outside to try and, well, I don't know exactly what he was trying to do, but it didn't matter. My brother was gone. We called the police and they said it sounded like my brother had some sort of mental crisis. Maybe he had picked up some kind of parasite in the woods that was impacting his brain chemistry. I know they're wrong though. Whatever that thing is, it is not my brother. My brother left for the Appalachian Trail and never came back. I think whatever that black smudge was in those photos was something that hunted him. And I think it was successful. Whatever that thing was killed my brother and somehow his body came back home. My brother disappeared, but I am terrified he will come back. We rented a cabin in the woods near a small town in Kentucky. The locals warned us not to arrive after dark. Written by Aftermeyer. Damn it, Olivia. It's 4 p.m. We were supposed to leave 3 hours ago, I said angrily, holding the phone to my ear and packing the last suitcase into the car. I know, there's nothing I can do about it now. I was supposed to stop by the office for 2 hours to help the girls with a few things because there are a lot of clients, and my boss kept piling more work on me. I can't say no. You know we need the money, she said in a raised voice, then added after a moment, I'm finishing up now. I'll be home in 30 minutes at the latest. Pack the car. I'll get back and we can go. I hung up. It wasn't the first time her boss had made her come into work, even on her day off. She worked at an insurance company and they always had problems finding employees. Olivia agreed to it, and even though it irritated me, I kept quiet because she was the one mainly supporting us. She made really good money. I'm a graphic designer. I pick up jobs that are becoming fewer and fewer every year, while I fight competition and the rise of artificial intelligence by offering rates that sometimes translate into less than minimum wage. This trip was our dream honeymoon, delayed over and over again. We got married over a month ago, but because of work, we had already postponed the trip several times. We agreed together that we simply wanted to go somewhere where we would have peace from people, technology, and could focus only on each other and resting. So I found us a cabin in the woods near the town of Pineville, Kentucky. It was beautiful. Nothing around it but forest, silence, and peace. And if we needed anything, we had about 2 miles to town, where there were local shops. 40 minutes passed, and Olivia still wasn't there. I dialed her number again. Are you on your way back? Damn it, that's like a 4-hour drive. We're gonna arrive at night, I said, losing the last little bit of my patience. Yes, Liam, I'm just leaving the office. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Did you call the owner to let her know we'll be this late? She asked, clearly irritated. I hesitated, but after a moment I answered. Of course I called. Everything is arranged. Good. Let's not argue. I'll be home soon. I love you, she said, and hung up. A chill ran down my back. In all the stress and chaos, I had forgotten to call Miss Sophia. In theory, we were supposed to be there in 20 minutes to pick up the keys. How was I supposed to tell her that we were only just leaving? I started pacing around the living room in panic. You can do this, Liam. She's just an old lady. Worst case, she yells at you, I said to myself, trying to build myself up. She won't cancel the reservation. The cabin is already paid for. I continued my monologue. All right, I'm calling. Good afternoon, Miss Sophia, I said a little too enthusiastically. After a moment of silence, the old woman's voice came through the phone. Hello, are you already there? You see, there's a situation. My wife got held up at work. We're only just leaving, I said uncertainly. Sir, you told me you had a 4-hour drive. It'll be after 10 by the time you get there. Why are you only calling me now? I'll already be asleep. I don't leave the house after dark, the old woman said dryly, irritated, and I felt my hands start to sweat. I'm very sorry, ma'am. With all the stress and confusion, I forgot to call earlier. We'll try to get there as quickly as possible. A long silence followed, and I sat there on pins and needles. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Hello, Mrs. Sophia? Are you there? I'm here. Come tomorrow morning, the old woman answered firmly. Please, have mercy. It's our honeymoon. We only have 1 week off. Every hour is worth its weight in gold to us, I said in a pleading tone. After another pause, she spoke. It would be better for you if you came in the morning, but if that's what you want, I'll leave the key on the porch. Take it, and when you're done with your stay, please leave it in the same place. Thank you so much. You're really saving me. I stopped mid-sentence, realizing the old woman had hung up. I sighed with relief. I knew the cabin owner would be angry, but I didn't expect her to take offense to that extent. Older people are naturally punctual, and apparently, that really got under her skin. The doorbell rang, and I nearly jumped, suddenly pulled out of my thoughts. Olivia had arrived, finally. On my way to the door, I thought how good it was that I had managed to handle it before she got back. If she found out I hadn't done it earlier, I would have listened the whole drive to her, going on and on about how I rushed her, how I didn't take care of such an important thing, how I lied to her, and who knows what else. So, are we going? I asked, opening the door. Olivia looked at me with a wide smile and answered playfully. I still have to pee. She seemed very excited. We set off. The drive from Cincinnati to Pineville is about 220 miles, which is roughly a 4-hour drive. The route went by pretty quickly. We talked trash about Olivia's boss, laughed, joked around. We were simply enjoying free time and the lack of pressure from responsibilities the next day. We should be there in 20 minutes. I can't wait until we arrive, drink some wine, and get into bed, I said, grinning from ear to ear. After a moment, I added in a low, lively voice, you know, and I don't mean sleeping. Olivia giggled with the look of a little troublemaker and said, stop it, you goof. What? It's our honeymoon after all, I said, looking at her. What's wrong? I asked, concerned. Olivia had a frightened expression, wide eyes, and she was pale. After a moment, she answered, Liam, I think I saw something weird. I looked around. What did you see? Where? By the road. It looked like someone was crouching. I think he was completely naked and emaciated, she said in a panic. She shoved her hands between her knees. I looked in the mirror. I saw nothing there except forest and darkness. Calm down, baby. You must be exhausted. You imagined it. We're almost in Pineville. I'll grab the keys quickly, and from there, it's only a few minutes to our cabin. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her head turn towards me. Damn it, Liam. That thing was looking at me. I wrapped my hand around her and pulled her head against my chest. Maybe it was just some homeless guy or some sick animal. Don't worry, you're safe. She nodded and forced a smile, but her eyes were still terrified. A moment later, we arrived at Miss Sophia's house. Wait there a second. I'll be right back, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. I got out of the car and walked onto the property. The keys were lying on the porch with a cheap tourist keychain. I took them and made a step toward the car. Suddenly, from a doghouse I hadn't noticed earlier, a medium-sized dog burst out with a roar and charged straight at me. My heart jumped into my throat, and I started running. I barely managed to slam the car door shut behind me before the beast reached me. The dog pressed its front paws against the window, barking. I threw the car into reverse and backed out. Jesus, what was that? That old lady could have warned me there was a dog on the property, I said, catching my breath. It clearly improved Olivia's mood. For the rest of the drive to the cabin, she giggled quietly to herself. We're here. Beautiful spot, I said, turning off the engine and opening the door. Olivia got out right after me and added, and poorly lit. We took the suitcases and headed toward the vacation cabin. Yeah, there really isn't much light here, I muttered, struggling with the bunch of keys and trying to aim for the keyhole. I managed. We went inside, and the smell of pine wood greeted us. The front door opened into a small hallway with a coat rack. On the right side, there was a kitchen made up of a piece of countertop and 3 cabinets beneath it. And on the left side, there was a large living room with a couch, a dining table, a fireplace, and stairs leading upstairs. Everything was done in a typical vacation cabin wooden style. I'm exhausted. We'll unpack tomorrow. Can you turn on the heat? It's cold in here, Olivia said, taking off her jacket. Sure, there should be instructions for us using the cabin on the counter, I said, setting the suitcase against the wall. I picked up a small notebook and started reading. There were instructions for using the gas stove, turning on hot water in the shower, information on where the breakers were, and at the end, instructions for heating the cabin. I started reading out loud. The cabin is heated only and exclusively by the fireplace. In the woodshed behind the cabin, there is an amount of wood matched to the number of nights booked. It must be chopped into smaller pieces. The small axe and chopping block are next to the woodshed. I quickly scanned the fire starting instructions and read it out loud. Heating the cabin takes 2 to 3 hours. Please do not leave the burning fireplace unattended. I froze. Good luck lighting it, Liam. Tonight you're sleeping downstairs so you can bravely guard the burning fireplace, Olivia said, irritated, dragging her suitcase upstairs. Shocked by that information, I took out my phone and opened the listing. But how only by fireplace? It says here there's electric heating and fireplace heating, I said angrily. I looked out the window. There was no lighting around the cabin at all. How was I supposed to chop that damn wood in the dark? On top of that, it was 11 o'clock at night. If I started the fireplace now, I wouldn't go to sleep until morning. I changed into sweatpants, laid down on the dusty fabric couch, and covered myself with an equally dusty blanket. I felt scratching in my nose and eyes. Beautiful. Tomorrow I'm calling that woman and demanding a partial refund, I said, closing my eyes. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of cabinets slamming and pots banging coming from the kitchen. I opened my eyes and propped myself up on my elbows. Do you have to make that much noise? I asked, slowly getting up from the couch. Olivia, with a sour look on her face, continued taking her anger out on the kitchen equipment, and after a moment replied, well, how did that fireplace go? Not too great, I guess, because I woke up with a cold nose. Great place you picked. I theatrically tapped my finger against my forehead. I opened the door and stepped outside. it was definitely warmer than inside. It was May, so the evenings were cold, and apparently nobody had heated this place since the beginning of the season, which left the cabin chilled through. I stretched slowly, looking around the property. I called Olivia, who came over after a moment with an offended expression. I hugged her and said, "Look how beautiful it is here. There's a fire pit, a grill, a big bench, forest all around, and instead of enjoying it, we're arguing for no reason." The listing said there was electric heating, so I'll call the owner in a second and ask, because maybe this fireplace thing is a mistake. I went back inside, opened my call history, and pressed the green call button. "Good morning. Did you arrive?" the old woman asked on the other side of the phone. "Yes, we arrived, Miss Sophia. How do I turn on the electric heating?" I asked. "Electric heat? Didn't you read the instructions?" "There is no electric heat. There's the fireplace. Unless you mean hot water, then you just have to plug in the water heater in the bathroom," she said calmly. "Mrs. Sophia, the listing says there are two sources of heating for the cabin, fireplace and electric," I said, angry. After a moment of silence, the old woman answered, "Well, yes, electric for heating the water and fireplace for the cabin. Did you read the listing? In the additional information from the host, everything is explained." I switched the call to speaker and opened the listing. Sure enough, in the panel on the left side, there was a section labeled additional information, and that information was included there. "I didn't read that part," I said, defeated. "Well, that's exactly how it is with you young people these days, all excited, don't read, and then you have complaints. In case you didn't read this part either, if you run out of wood assigned to you, you can buy more from me," she said bluntly, with a hint of malice in her voice, and hung up. I looked at my phone. I felt heat rush to my head. When I talked to her for the first time, she was a kind, sweet old lady. After the payment, she had turned into a nasty old lady. I took 3 deep breaths, slowly letting the air out of my lungs. I wasn't going to let this trip be ruined. I walked over to Olivia, who was just finishing unpacking our things. "Listen, I'm sorry. I checked the listing badly. In the details, it said the heating is only by fireplace." "Oh well, it happens. So what are we doing?" she asked. "Maybe you could run into town and do a little shopping and I'll chop the wood in the meantime," I said, taking her hand. She smiled at me and said, "That's a good idea. I'm hungry." Olivia drove toward town, and I stood there looking at the small stack of wood, wondering how I was supposed to go about it. I set a piece on the chopping block, raised the axe over my head, and swung with all my strength. I missed, and the axe flew down with force, grazing the wood and landing in the ground millimeters from my foot. A cold sweat ran through me. Damn, that was close, I thought. Stepping away from the place of my near tragedy to a safe distance, suddenly I heard a voice from behind me. "Hello, what are you doing here?" An older gentleman was standing there, leaning on the handlebars of a bicycle. "Good morning, I'm trying to chop some wood," I said, embarrassed. He straightened up and said, amused, "First time chopping? You almost said goodbye to your leg." "First time. I've never held an axe in my life," I said, walking toward him. The man leaned his bicycle against the fence and stepped onto the property. "I'll show you on a few pieces how to do it." "Thank you. I'm Liam," I said, holding out my hand. "James," he answered shortly, returning the handshake and heading toward the woodshed. The man took the axe in his hand and said, "Listen, Liam, feet apart, aim a little past the center, hold the axe firmly, and bring your whole body down. The movement should come from your knees." The axe cut through the air, splitting the piece of wood into 2 perfect halves. James looked over the axe blade, turning it in his hand as he spoke. "This little axe is too small for those pieces of wood, so you're going to struggle a little bit. Seriously, Sophia could invest a little here if she wants to rent this cabin out to people. Anyway, when did you get here? I looked at him, full of admiration. My wife and I arrived last night. James looked me straight in the eyes and grew serious. At night? You arrived after dark? Yeah, that's just how it worked out, I answered, a little thrown off by his sudden change in behavior. This whole time he had almost been smiling, and now that icy tone and serious face. The man set the axe down, stood up, and walked toward his bicycle. I have to go. I wish you both luck. Thanks, I called after him, scratching my head. I took the axe in my hand and started chopping. James was right. His instructions made it so even I could do it relatively safely and effectively. What is it with them and arriving after dark? First Mrs. Sophia, now him. I wish you both luck. People here are really strange. I chopped the wood and stacked it next to the fireplace. Why isn't Olivia back yet, I thought, looking at my phone. She had left over an hour ago. The town was only a few minutes away. I opened my contacts and called her. At that same moment, I heard a vibration coming from the kitchen. She hadn't taken her phone. A strange shiver went through me, and I started to worry. I'll walk toward her. Worst case, we'll meet on the way. There's only one road leading here. I locked the door and started down the little road toward town. I had maybe taken 10 steps when I noticed a car approaching in the distance. I felt relief. Well, great, she's coming back. She's gonna make fun of me for worrying for no reason, I said, stopping and waving in her direction. She was driving a little too fast. Something was wrong. I looked closer and froze. The front was dented on the right side. The headlight was smashed and the fender was cracked. I started running toward her. She pulled up and got out without turning off the engine. I wanted to call. I forgot to take my phone, she said, sobbing. I quickly wrapped my arms around her. Baby, what happened? I hit a tree, Liam. I saw him again, she said, trembling. A shock ran down my back. Are you hurt? Who did you see? I asked, looking at her. She didn't look injured, but she was completely shaken. She pressed herself tighter against me. I want to go back to our house. We stood like that for a moment longer. Come on. For now, we'll go back to the cabin. You tell me everything okay? I said gently. She nodded and sat down in the passenger seat. The car must have hit the tree at an unlucky angle, which is why the outside damage was so visible, but probably not very hard, because the airbag hadn't gone off. I parked the car and we went inside. Olivia sat down on the couch without a word and stared at one point. In the meantime, I made tea and sat down beside her. Baby, please, tell me what happened. What did you see? I said, placing my hand on her shoulder. She started speaking in a trembling voice. I was coming back from town. I was somewhere halfway along the road, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed some kind of shadow between the trees. She sniffed, and tears ran down her cheek. I thought it was some animal, but a little further down, that thing suddenly appeared on the road. I saw it literally for a split second. It was crouched, unnaturally hunched over and staring at me. I closed my eyes and hit the brakes. The car went into a tree. I was so scared. I wanted to call you. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. I went cold. That thing again? What is going on here? Could these be hallucinations caused by too much stress and exhaustion? Finally looking for a way out, I thought. Worried. Sweetheart, it must have been some animal, I said, trying to comfort her. But inside, I felt fear myself. Not because of some imaginary creature, but because I was worried about Olivia. We sat like that for a while longer. I managed to convince her to stay, and I promised that, if needed, I would be the one driving into town. Olivia needed this vacation. She had to rest, and I would do everything I could to make that happen. We ate breakfast and drank coffee outside. To improve her mood, I told her about my adventure with the axe and the older man. I left out the ending and his strange behavior so I wouldn't stress her out more. I even managed to make her laugh a little. The day passed pretty quickly. It was genuinely pleasant. We spent most of it outside, enjoying the sun and the charm of the place. It was getting close to 6 p.m., and it slowly started getting dark. We went back inside. Olivia started making dinner, and I lit the fireplace and took out the wine glasses. The previous evening hadn't gone well. I hoped this one would be different. We ate in a pleasant atmosphere, enjoying the wine and the warmth coming from the fireplace. The fire slowly started dying down, so I suggested going to the bedroom. Olivia went to take a shower, and I sat on the couch, finishing the last sip from my glass. Unfortunately, the shower stall was too small for the two of us. After 15 minutes, she came out, and a cloud of steam rolled out of the bathroom. I stepped into the shower base, turned on the water, and shouted, "Damn it with this cabin." A stream of cold water shot from the shower head, pouring over my head and the rest of my body. The hot water must have run out, I thought, looking at the small electric water heater. After my unplanned cold shower, I went up the wooden stairs and crossed into the bedroom. I looked at Olivia. She was lying on her side. I slowly laid down beside her and realized she was asleep. I was a little disappointed. I had hoped for a somewhat more intimate evening, but I understood she had to be exhausted. She had gone through a lot of stress and emotions today. I put my head on the pillow and fell asleep. I woke up with a dry, slightly scratchy feeling in my throat. I slowly opened my eyes and sleepily glanced toward the window. It was dark outside. I need to drink some water. I must have made the fireplace too hot and dried out the air, I thought. Glancing at my phone, 3:40. I looked toward the other side of the bed. The place where Olivia had been sleeping was empty. Maybe she went to the bathroom or also went to get something to drink, I thought. But I felt that something was wrong. It was too quiet. I sat still for a moment. A huge wave of anxiety passed through me, and I felt my stomach tighten. I couldn't hear any footsteps or any other sounds. I quickly got out of bed and went downstairs. Standing halfway down the stairs, I froze, and my heart beat harder. The door to the outside was open, and Olivia was nowhere to be seen. I grabbed the handle and yanked it much harder than I should have. The door slammed against the inside wall of the cabin, leaving a large dent. I ran outside, my skin crawling and suffocating weight on my chest. My heart was pounding like crazy. "Olivia!" I screamed with all my might, my voice tearing through my throat like sandpaper. The echo carried into the woods, dying out in the distance. I turned on my phone's flashlight and ran around the property. Olivia was nowhere. I caught my breath and screamed, "Olivia!" again. I'd never felt fear like this. My stomach was in knots, and every beat of my heart felt like it was going to burst through my ribs. Where is she? Why did she just disappear, and where the hell is she? I looked around frantically, trying to wrap my head around it. The car was right there, so she didn't drive off. Where the hell is she? Panic was choking me, and my breathing got fast and shallow. Circling the property a second time, I noticed the gate was open. I ran through it, lighting the way with my phone. Running forward, I felt cold sand under my bare feet, and small rocks dug into my skin, cutting me. The air was cold and damp, scratching my lungs with every inhale. I looked around for any kind of trail, anything that could show me where to go. Darkness and tree silhouettes were everywhere. All I could hear was the rustle of the woods, insects, and the thumping in my temples. I ran about half a mile. My lungs were burning like fire. I had to slow down to a jog. My hands were shaking, and I felt completely hopeless. My head was empty, except for one question. Did I lose her forever? Suddenly, from my right, I heard a very faint sound. I strained to listen. I heard my name. I wasn't sure if it was real or if I was just going crazy. I didn't care and ran straight into the trees. Branches snapped and scratched my arms and legs. I ignored the pain. Only finding her mattered. The sound grew. I was getting closer. I ran, pushing through trees and brush. I heard a quiet sob and a sharp jolt went through my whole body. It had to be her. I sped up, reached a fallen log and jumped over it. I froze, and my heart stopped with me for a split second. Something was lying under the tree. Olivia. She was in just her pajamas, her arms and legs all scratched up. She had sand and dirt in her hair. I started to shake. My legs went soft. "Olivia," I screamed, running towards her. I hugged her tight. "It's okay, honey. What happened? What are you doing out here?" The adrenaline crashed, and tears fell from my eyes. A mix of everything hit me. Fear, relief, anger, all of it. I held her as tight as I could, repeating, "It's okay. I found you. It's okay now." We stayed like that in silence until she finally spoke. "Liam, I don't know what happened. I woke up, opened my eyes, and I was already here." I think it only just hit her that I was there because she squeezed me back. I felt the warmth of her body, and with it, a massive wave of relief. She continued, head tucked against my chest. "I called for you. I called for help, but nobody came. I was here all alone. I'm cold. Please, let's just go." Another wave of tears hit me, dripping on her head. I held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I couldn't stop. She was so terrified and helpless. The sight of her was breaking my heart. It hit me how much I loved her. If I lost her, I would lose myself too. I took off my shirt and covered her back. "It's okay. Let's go. We're almost there." When I grabbed her arm, I felt how cold she was. Usually silky, soft, and warm. Now she was rough from the wounds and dirt. Even though I wanted to know what happened, I didn't ask. I saw that she was terrified and lost. We walked in complete silence, broken only by her quiet sobbing. When we returned, we sat at the table. I immediately wrapped her in a blanket. Now, in the light, I saw her clearly. She was pale and covered in dirt, and her body was full of small wounds and... "What is this?" I asked, shocked, pointing at her leg. "I don't know, but it hurts a lot," she answered quietly, sniffling. On her leg was a massive red mark wrapping around her entire calf. I knelt and looked at it closely. Cold sweat rolled down my forehead. 4 thin marks spaced almost perfectly apart. Looked like fingers. It's impossible. They're too thin and too long for a human hand. "It's probably from branches. They must have wrapped around your leg," I said, standing up and heading toward the kitchen. I put on water for tea, trying to make things feel normal. Olivia didn't answer. She sat motionless, staring blankly at the corner of the table. I added after a moment, "Honey, you probably sleepwalked." She lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes full of anger and disbelief. "Liam, I have never sleepwalked in my life, and what the hell was I doing a mile into the woods, for God's sakes?" she asked, her voice rising. I put the bags into the mugs, staring at the kettle. I didn't know what to say. She was right. I'd never seen her sleepwalk. I'd never heard of sleepwalkers doing that. I walked over and looked deep into her eyes. "Listen, honey. We haven't had a vacation in years. We're under constant stress, work, sleep. That's it. Maybe now that your body is resting, it's all coming out. In a few days, once you get some real rest, everything will go back to normal, I promise." "Maybe," she said, trembling. Then added as she stood up, "I'm gonna take a shower. I feel disgusting." I stared blankly at the bathroom door. Even though she was safe, I couldn't calm down. I felt a knot in my stomach. The stress wasn't letting go. What should we do? Go back home or stay here? I'm almost certain she needs this vacation, that she needs to just rest. I'm sure once she relaxes, everything will work out. I kept telling myself that. I took the hot tea and sat on the couch. Now that the emotions were fading, I felt the sting from the cuts on my legs. There were so many. Most were shallow, but the ones on my feet were deep. After a moment, Olivia came out of the bathroom and asked, "Liam, are we going to bed?" "Go ahead, honey. I'll join you in a second. I just need to get it together," I said with a forced smile. She ignored it and went upstairs. I washed my feet, took tweezers, and started pulling out splinters and pebbles. There were so many of them. I started to get drowsy. Everything was blurring. I leaned my head back and sank into it. Pain shot through my neck. Damn! I fell asleep sitting up. I slowly opened my eyes and my heart beat harder. A heavy sense of wrong washed over me. It's too quiet. I looked sharply toward the door, and a jolt went through my neck again. It was light outside, and Olivia always woke before me. I thought, bolting to my feet. Panic hit me. I grabbed the handle. The door was locked. I ran quickly up these stairs. Standing outside the bedroom, I heard quiet snoring. I felt relief. She was there, sleeping safe and sound. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and checked the time. It was 8 a.m. I had slept maybe 2 hours. I was wired. No way I'm sleeping now. My body was in full fight or flight mode. My heart rate was closer to a CrossFit workout than a resting state. On shaky legs, I went downstairs and put on coffee. Holding the spoon, I noticed my hands were shaking. I took the hot mug and went out on the porch, leaving the door open. Warm sunlight hit my face. Outside, only the birds and a gentle breeze. It looked completely normal, like nothing happened last night. But it still didn't sit right with me. What happened in the night was wrong. The thought sent a cold shiver through me. How did she end up all the way out there? I sat there for 2 hours, stuck in my own head. What really happened? What should we do? A strange sound from upstairs snapped me out of it. It sounded like one long, dragging scrape of something hard against wood. At first, I thought mouse or squirrel, but it was different. It resonated. It was too clear and too loud for a small pest. It's probably the roof, temperature change. It was cold last night. Now the sun's out. The logs are expanding. I'm just tired. My senses are off, I thought. I poured another coffee and went back to the porch to enjoy the silence. I sat down and suddenly I heard a voice right behind me. I almost jumped, spilling boiling water over my legs. A sharp, burning pain hit my thigh and my cut feet. "Did you make coffee for me too?" It was Olivia. I looked at her, writhing and pulling off my pants with the hot stain. "Damn, how did you sneak up on me like that?" I said, wiping tears from my face. I tossed my wet pajama pants aside and froze. How did she come down so quietly? These are wooden stairs. You can hear a creak from a mile away. "I smelled the coffee and came down," she said, staring out toward the woods. Heat rushed to my head. I was pissed and my leg was already turning red. I took a deep breath and slowly let it out. I forced myself to calm down. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," she replied, heading toward the kitchen. I watched her, and unease replaced the anger. She was moving weirdly. Her back was stiff and straight, and she was walking on her tiptoes. I followed her. "Olivia, are you sure everything's okay? I was waiting for you to wake up. We need to decide. Are we staying or going back?" "Let's stay. Like you said, Liam. It's probably stress," she said, without looking at me. Something was wrong. I stepped closer and looked at her. She was too calm, too quiet. Usually, everything shows on her face. She laughs or yells or cries. She never acts like this. Cold. Flat. I hugged her waist and pulled her to me. "Honey, are you sure everything's okay? You're acting strange. Are you sure you want to stay here?" She turned her head toward me and I froze. For the first time that morning, she looked me in the eyes and said coldly, "Yes, Liam." I backed away. In her eyes, I saw a strange white void. I saw it for literally a split second. Then her look went back to normal. A sudden spike of fear made my heart ache. I must have imagined it. Exhaustion and stress. I'll have to sleep during the day, I thought, going upstairs. "Okay, if that's what you want, honey, I'll go chop some wood for tonight," I said loudly. I put on a tracksuit, ran down the stairs, and went outside. Going out, I glanced toward the kitchen. Olivia was standing there, staring at her mug, completely ignoring me. I took the axe, set a log on the stump, and swung with everything I had. The wood split clean in two. Better than last time, I thought, and stood there looking at my work. Suddenly, a voice from the fence snapped me out of it. "Looks like you've learned already." I smiled. I really liked James. He always had this warmth and confidence. I walked over. "I had a good teacher." We shook hands. "Legs are fine from what I see, so why the limp?" he asked, smiling. I felt a chill on my neck. "Yeah, I went outside barefoot, got some splinters." James laughed. "Barefoot? You really are new to the woods. Why would you do that?" I ignored the question. I didn't want to go there. "Listen, how about a breakfast with us? As a thank you," I asked. James walked through the gate. "I've already had breakfast, but I won't say no to coffee." Halfway there, I called out, "Honey, make some coffee. James is here." For a second, things felt normal again. Olivia stood in the doorway, and I said, "James, this is my wife, Olivia." I looked to the side and realized I was talking to myself. I turned around. James was frozen halfway down the path, staring at the porch. He went pale. His warm gaze was gone, replaced by fear. "James?" I asked. He took a few steps back. "Damn, sorry, I gotta run," he said, then walked off fast toward the exit. At the gate, he stopped. "I'm sorry, really." Then, he was gone. The shock tightened my throat. I looked at Olivia. She just walked inside, indifferent, like nothing happened. I felt a squeeze in my stomach. I just stood there, trying to make sense of it. James left like that before. Maybe it's his age, maybe he remembered something. And Olivia, she went through a trauma. Woke up alone in the woods. Of course, she's not normal. I need to be a man and support her, I thought, and headed inside. She was sitting on the couch with a mug of cold coffee, staring at the stairs. I sat next to her. "Honey, is everything okay?" She took a sip. "Liam, I already said." She said it with no emotion, just a resonant drawl at the end. The way she said it made the hairs on my neck stand up. I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless, like I was about to go crazy. I stood up and went out. "Get it together, Liam," I muttered on the porch. I started pacing. She says she's fine, but there's no way she's fine. "We'll wait until tomorrow. If it's not better, we're leaving. Psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever." My thoughts were racing, mixing with the exhaustion. It felt surreal, like my body wasn't mine anymore. I was moving, but it didn't feel like me. I needed to do something normal, so I went back to chopping wood. It took half the day, and every hour I felt the tension falling off. I stacked wood by the fireplace and put the rest in the woodshed. I went back inside, and Olivia was nowhere. I looked up. She probably went to lie down. I went to the fireplace and started stacking. My stomach growled. I hadn't even eaten breakfast today. Let her sleep. I'll make lunch. I'll wake her when it's ready. I prepared the food and went outside. I lit the grill. Soon, the smell of meat and spices filled the air. My mouth started watering. Now I just had to wake Olivia, I thought, heading inside. I went to the stairs and called out, "Honey, come down." Lunch is ready. Hollow silence. Unease shot through me. I ran upstairs, 2 steps at a time, and looked at the bed. Olivia was on her side, back to the door. Dread shook my whole body. Olivia? I asked. Silence. I walked slowly around the bed. She wasn't moving. Eyes closed. I went pale, holding my breath. Then I saw it. The calm movement. She was breathing. I nudged her shoulder. Hey, you coming to eat? No reaction. I stood there tense. She must be exhausted. I walked around on my tiptoes. I'd just put the meat in the fridge and make it fresh later. For now, I'll let her rest. I sat and waited, hoping she'd join me. Hoping she'd come out with a smile and say, "What smells so good?" Or even be mad that I didn't wake her. But nothing. I lost my appetite. The grill went out. The meat went cold. A chill ran through me. It was almost 7 p.m. The sun was setting. It was cold. I went in to light the fire. Time passed. I kept checking on her, then dozing off. By the time I finished my 5th tea, I checked my phone. 11:41 p.m. I could barely keep my eyes open. My skin hurt from the chills. Even with the fire, I was cold. I took a hot shower and went up. On shaky legs, I laid down next to her. I wrapped my arm around her and passed out. Then an inhuman, guttural scream filled the room. I shot up, gasping for air. My heart was beating so hard, it felt like it was tearing through my ribs. It was Olivia. She was screaming like someone was skinning her alive. Her face twisted in absolute horror. Her eyes were so wide, I only saw the whites. She was sitting up, pointing at the corner, shaking and screaming. I started to shake. Heat flooded me. I felt primal fear, the worst I'd ever felt. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. I couldn't even swallow spit. The only sound I made was a quiet squeak. I looked where she was pointing and jumped back against the wall. In the dark, I saw a thin, tall silhouette. I fumbled for the light, and when I hit it, everything went quiet. Olivia collapsed, unconscious. The shadow was gone. On the wall, only one thing remained. 4 perfectly parallel gouges. I don't remember how we got to the car. I felt like I was trapped inside some horrible dream. A nightmare. I left everything behind. Keys, clothes, phone, wallet. I picked Olivia up in my arms, unconscious. And a moment later, we were already on the road. She was in the back seat, and I was in the front with my shaking hands gripping the steering wheel. Normally, this would have been a real feat for me. Almost physically impossible, but after what I saw in that cabin, the adrenaline in my veins did everything for me. The pounding in my head felt like it was trying to split my temples apart. Hundreds of chaotic questions and thoughts were bombarding my brain. What the hell was that? Olivia had been screaming at the top of her lungs like she was possessed, in some inhuman, agonizing voice. It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard something that terrifying. And what was that shadow in the corner of the room? It looked like some kind of silhouette, a twisted caricature of some human or animal. And more than anything, where the hell did those marks carved into the wall come from? They hadn't been there just a few hours earlier. A moment later, I realized I had driven into Pineville. I pulled into somebody's driveway and got out of the car without even turning off the engine. The freezing night air hit me instantly. Absolute silence surrounded me. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears and the deep pounding of my heartbeat. No lights, no people, no sounds, no signs of life. At that hour, the town felt almost abandoned. The only thing saying otherwise being the well-kept yards and cars parked in driveways. I quickly walked to the back door of the car and opened it. A drop of cold sweat rolled down my forehead. I looked at Olivia. She was lying motionless in the back seat. I gently placed 2 fingers against her neck and checked for a pulse. It was there, and it was way too fast. I tried waking her up. "Baby, are you okay?" I said, gently shaking her shoulder. She didn't react. I started begging her to wake up, to at least open her eyes, but she was completely unconscious. My throat went dry, and a crushing feeling of helplessness hit me. My legs suddenly felt weak. I dropped to my knees beside the car, and tears started streaming down my face. If only I had listened to her. If we had turned back when she begged me to, none of this would have happened. Why was I so blind? Why didn't I believe her when she said she saw that thing? Did I really want what was best for her, or was I just a selfish bastard? I screamed, slamming my fist into the side of the car. I covered my face with my hand. I started sobbing, gasping for air. I couldn't stop. I cried like a little kid watching someone take the one thing he loved most and crush it beneath their foot right in front of him. Sadness, helplessness, and panic turned into aggression. A wave of rage flooded through me, and I completely lost control. I kept punching the car over and over and over again, and blood started dripping from my knuckles. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A curtain in the house whose driveway we were parked in slowly fell back into place. "Help!" I screamed, waving my arms like a castaway stranded on some deserted island. I started jumping without stopping. "Call the police! Call an ambulance!" I stood there holding my breath, staring at the window and listening. Nothing. I looked around and screamed again, "People, please help us!" My voice carried far into the surrounding houses and woods. Not a single light came on. I dropped to my knees again, staring blankly ahead. A tingling sensation crawled down my spine. Why doesn't anybody want to help us? What the hell is happening here? Nobody comes outside after dark. They obviously know something. Why didn't anyone warn us that whatever this thing is, it only comes out at night? Then it hit me. James and Mrs. Sophia. I stood up and got back into the car. I placed my hands on the steering wheel and felt a sharp pain in my fists. I looked down. The skin across my knuckles was torn open. I ignored it. I slammed my foot on the gas and drove toward Mrs. Sophia's house. As I drove, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, hoping Olivia would wake up. But she just laid there, stiff in the back seat, showing no signs of life. The only thing calming me down was the sight of her chest rising and falling. I pulled into Mrs. Sophia's driveway. I killed the engine, opened the door, and ran toward the porch. Just like I expected. Total darkness inside and all around the house. Halfway there, I suddenly froze. I remembered that the last time I was here, that old woman's aggressive dog had almost gotten me. I stood there, motionless, my stomach twisting into knots, waiting for the attack. Slowly, I turned my head toward the doghouse. No movement, no barking. I crouched down and looked inside. It seemed empty. Maybe she bought the dog inside the house. I ran to the front door and knocked. I held my breath, listening for any sounds from the inside, but all I got back was silence. A chill ran through my entire body. If the dog was inside, I'd hear him by now, I thought, knocking again. Then I started pounding on the door with my fist as hard as I could. "Hello? Mrs. Sophia, please, open the door," I shouted, hitting harder and harder. Every punch sent a wave of pain through my hand and left another smear of blood behind. The old wooden door practically jumped on its hinges. I'm not giving up, I thought. For Olivia, I need to find out what the hell is going on. I ran around the property, looking through every window, and with every single one, I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening. Through the gaps in the curtains, I could see the house was almost empty. Inside, there were only a few large pieces of furniture, but all the normal things that prove somebody actually lives there were missing. No kitchen utensils, no rugs, no books, no decorations on the shelves. There wasn't even a couch in the living room. I stood in the front of the porch, staring at the front door like I was hypnotized. What the hell is going on here? Did the old woman leave, I thought? Suddenly, I heard a muffled pounding against glass coming from the car. I spun around. It was Olivia. She was looking around in terror, tears in her eyes. She was crying for help. I took off running and sprinted back to the car. I yanked open the rear door. "Liam, where am I?" she said, stuttering. I wrapped my arms around her. "Baby, everything's okay. You're in the car. Don't be scared. You're safe." I looked at her, and a wave of fear ran through me. Her pupils were unnaturally wide. She was completely pale, with dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in a week. "Liam, I'm scared. Why are we here?" she said in a panicked voice, digging her nails into my shoulder. I grabbed her by the shoulders and looked deep into her eyes. "It's okay, baby. We're going home. Everything's okay." I hugged her again, and that seemed to calm her down. At least a little. I got back into the car and we drove off. I wanted to take her to the hospital, but Olivia kept begging me to take her home. "Liam, please. I just want to lie down in our bedroom, in our bed, please." That was the answer to every argument I made. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to tell a hospital. Some strange creature attacked my wife during our honeymoon. I saw it too. They'd lock us both in a psych ward, I thought. So I agreed to drive us straight home. If she didn't feel better by tomorrow, we'd go straight to the hospital. During the drive, I felt non-stop, growing tension throughout my entire body. I kept looking around, checking if that thing was following us, if it would suddenly appear on the side of the road or in my rearview mirror. I asked Olivia if she remembered what happened. I had a horrible, terrible nightmare. I was so scared. I don't remember it exactly, but I know something really bad happened in it, she answered, curling up. After a long pause, I looked over at Olivia. She had fallen asleep. We were almost at the exact stretch of road where she had first saw that thing. I could feel panic taking over my body, like I was wearing a ticking bomb whose timer was about to hit 0. We were getting closer to that place. Closer and closer. Sweat started rolling down my forehead, one drop after another. I prayed we'd get through that stretch as fast as possible. I prayed that thing wouldn't show up. Just one more mile, I thought, holding my breath. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, looked toward the shoulder, and a massive wave of relief hit me. I gasped for air and finally relaxed. There was nothing there. We were safe. The nightmare was over. The rest of the drive went by fast, and I spent most of it fighting my heavy, drooping eyelids. I pulled into our driveway and killed the engine. Olivia was still asleep. The dashboard clock read 6:30 a.m. The sun was coming up, flooding everything with warm morning light. I stepped out of the car, and a strange mix of relief and that familiar feeling of finally being back somewhere safe washed over me. I'll unlock the house and carry Olivia inside. Let her sleep, I thought, as I walked toward the front door. I slipped my hands into my pockets and froze. Shit. My keys were still back at that damn cabin. Olivia's spare keys were at the neighbors. The Wests were the only family in the neighborhood that we knew, the kind of people we'd sometimes share dinner or a bottle of wine with. Whenever they were out of town, we'd watch their house, feed their fish, water their plants as a neighborly favor. This time, we asked them to do the same for us, but how the hell was I supposed to explain that we came back days early and I didn't have the keys to my own house? I didn't have a choice. I walked over and rang the doorbell. After a long moment, the door finally opened, and our neighbor stood in the doorway wearing a bathrobe, her hair a complete mess. I felt heat rush into my face. "Oh, Elena, hey, did I wake you up?" "Liam, you're already back?" she said dryly, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She's definitely not happy, I thought. Yeah, Olivia wasn't feeling well. I think she might have caught some kind of cold. Can I grab the keys? I said, feeling the shame and embarrassment building inside of me. Elena walked back inside, clearly irritated. Liam, it's 6:30 a.m., Sunday. Couldn't this wait until at least 8? You know, this is the only day of the week we actually get to sleep in. She came back a moment later, stopped a few feet away from me, held out the keys and added, and why exactly are you wearing pajamas? And where are your shoes? Liam, is everything okay? Sorry, I had lost my keys. Olivia was feeling really bad, and we came back in a hurry, I said, staring down as I took the key. A wave of heat flooded my face. I could feel my ears turning red and my breathing speeding up. In all of this, I had completely forgotten I wasn't wearing normal clothes. I had run out of that house in a total panic with only Olivia in my arms. Elena frowned and looked at me uncertainly. Oh my God, Liam, what happened to your hand? I quickly hid my hands behind my back, and a shock ran straight down my spine. I looked up for only a second and saw the expression on her face. Confusion. Concern. It's nothing. Olivia's waiting. Gotta go. Bye, I said, almost running back toward our house. I never heard the sound of her door closing, and I could still feel her eyes on me. I panicked. You should have made something up, you idiots, I cursed at myself. I unlocked the house and went back to the car for Olivia. As I picked her up, I could feel my arm shaking. I glanced nervously toward the West's house. Elena was gone. She must have gone back inside. I'll explain it somehow later, I thought as I walked toward the house. I stepped through the front door, and years of sitting behind a computer with zero exercise immediately made themselves known. As I climbed the stairs, my legs were burning, and my spine was begging for mercy. I finally made it to the bedroom and carefully walked toward the edge of the bed. Setting Olivia down went a lot less gracefully than I had planned. I lost my balance under her weight and fell onto her, face first into the blanket. I quickly stood up and pulled my arms out from under her. Shit, I definitely woke her up, I thought. But Olivia didn't even twitch. Not even an eyelid. She had to have been completely exhausted. I pulled the blanket over her and walked downstairs. I locked the front door, walked into the kitchen, and set the coffee machine for a double espresso. The grinder kicked on, and the kitchen filled with the smell of freshly ground beans. I grabbed a mug and sat down at the dining table. We're home. We're safe. It's over. I kept repeating it to myself as I took a sip of hot coffee and stared blankly at the corner of the table. I rubbed my tired eyes. Even with the dopamine hit from that familiar, comforting taste, the exhaustion was still cutting through. My entire body felt unnaturally heavy. My hands were tingling, and my muscles kept twitching uncontrollably. All I wanted was to lie down next to Olivia, hold her, and fall asleep for a while. But I couldn't. Deep down, I still felt overwhelming dread. I felt like something bad could happen at any second. I was terrified I'd hear her scream again. Just remembering that sound sent a shock through my body. I remembered the look on her face. I squeezed my eyes shut. I tried thinking about something else, something good, but I just couldn't. I couldn't get that image out of my head. That sight wasn't human. That terror in her eyes, like she had come face to face with death itself. The whole scene started replaying in my head, over and over. That scream, the look on her face, that thing in the corner of the room, those claw marks on the wall. The emotions came rushing back with 10 times more force. I kept taking bigger and bigger breaths, but it felt like no air was actually reaching my lungs. My throat started tingling. Pressure rushed into my head, making the whole world spin. I was scared I was about to suffocate. I was scared I was about to die. I opened my hand, swung with everything I had, and slapped myself hard across the face. The sound echoed through the entire kitchen, and I felt a wave of heat and dull pain spread across my cheek. I placed both hands on the table and gasped greedily for air. My last panic attack was 10 years ago. I don't have time for this right now. I need to start doing something, I thought. I pushed myself away from the table and finished the last sip of coffee. I need to contact that old woman and find out what the hell is going on here, but how? My phone and Olivia's phone were both back in Pineville, and the only neighbors I could borrow one from already thought I was losing my mind. I need to just go out and buy something temporarily, I thought as I walked toward the bathroom. I took a quick shower and changed into normal clothes. I looked down at my hands, torn apart from punching the car. They burned and stung at the same time. I wrapped them in bandages and pulled on a pair of thin gloves I used to wear when I went running years ago. The shower helped a little. Even though my body didn't seem to care about the caffeine at all, I felt at least a little fresher. I grabbed my car keys from the table, and that's when it hit me. Shit. My wallet, my cash, cards, my ID, they were all still back in that cursed cabin. What can you do, Liam? Think, I muttered to myself angrily. Pacing around the living room, my eyes landed on the dresser, and suddenly, it hit me. I grabbed my passport from the drawer. I'll go to my cell provider. They should be able to give me some kind of phone, I thought, and walked out. I had to do it fast. Olivia was home alone. I drove to the store, got the cheapest phone possible on a payment plan, signed the paperwork, and got back into the car. Sitting behind the wheel, I opened the browser and found Mrs. Sophia's cabin listing. I copied the number and called. After 3 long rings, she picked up. Hello? I heard that old woman's voice, and my throat went dry. A sudden wave of aggression hit me. What the hell is going on here? What does all this mean? What's happening to my wife? I asked, shocked by my own reaction. After the first question, I completely lost it. What's all this about not going outside after dark? What the hell is that thing? Why aren't you home? You're going to explain all of this to me right now. I kept screaming, spitting all over the steering wheel. Then I stopped, breathing heavily, waiting for any kind of reaction. After a moment of silence, she spoke. I warned you. I'm sorry I warned you, but you didn't listen, and now it's too late. She hung up. I slammed my fist into the steering wheel as hard as I could. The horn echoed across the parking lot, and a wave of pain shot from my hand all the way up into my skull. I called again. Voicemail. God damn it, I screamed at the top of my lungs, throwing the phone in the back seat. The old bitch blocked me. What the hell does too late mean? I said, slamming my hand against the door. I started the engine and tore out toward home with the tires screaming. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the damaged phone from the back seat. I jumped out of the car, rushed through the front door, and flew upstairs to make sure Olivia was okay. She was sleeping peacefully, exactly the way I had left her. Suddenly, a chill ran through me. I felt that strange, uneasy feeling again, and instinctively looked into every corner of the room. No claw marks anywhere, no shadows. Standing there, breathing hard, I looked down at the cracked screen of my new phone. The display read 10:47 a.m. I sat down on the bed next to Olivia. I can't do this anymore, and collapsed onto the bed. I woke up to a long, scraping sound, like somebody was dragging a rake across the roof. A violent shock shot through my body, and I jumped out of bed. I turned on the bedroom light. I looked around. Olivia was still asleep. Holy shit, I said, breathing heavily. My heart was pounding like crazy. A wave of fear spread through my entire body, so hard it physically hurt. I felt weak. I dropped into a crouch and grabbed my chest. I felt like I was millimeters away from a heart attack. I froze there, fighting for every breath. I took a few slow, deep breaths, slowly letting the air out. I carefully stood up and turned off the light. I grabbed my phone and walked downstairs. I pressed the lock button and stared at the screen through half-dead eyes. The number shimmered in my vision, but after a moment, I managed to read the time. 3:35 a.m. Shit, I slept through an entire day. And half the night. I put on my shoes and opened the front door, rubbing my stiff neck. I stepped outside. What the hell was that sound? Did I dream it? I had to know. I walked around the house, carefully checking every side of the roof. Nothing. It had to be my exhausted, fried brain playing tricks on me. The cold night air started calming down my blood pressure, and a light chill spread across my skin. I walked back inside and headed toward the kitchen. I walked up to the coffee machine and pressed the coffee icon. Then suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I flinched and took 3 quick steps back. Something moved across the backyard outside the window, unnaturally fast. My heart started pounding again. I stood there, staring at the glass like I was hypnotized. Am I losing my mind, I thought, as I slowly stepped closer to the counter. Then suddenly, I heard knocking behind me, on glass. A violent shock ran down my spine. My entire body locked up. Slowly, I turned my head toward the living room. A drop of sweat rolled down my temple. I walked forward on shaking legs, moving slowly toward the window. A wave of fear wrapped around my body like a pressure chamber. In the glass, lit by the moonlight, I could see sharp, perfectly symmetrical dents, and tiny pieces of glass shimmered across the windowsill. They looked like they'd been made by something large and sharp, with 4 blades. My hands started tingling, like thousands of needles were stabbing through them, and my fingers curled inward on their own. Standing there motionless, I suddenly realized I hadn't been breathing for several seconds. I gasped for air and took a step back. We need to get out of here, I thought, as I started toward the stairs. My body felt like it weighed a ton. I had to fight for every step, for every breath. My body kept jerking with violent spasms. I practically crawled upstairs on all fours, stepped into the bedroom, and froze. Olivia was lying in bed, and above her, I saw a twisted, sickly thin silhouette crouching there, its face only inches from hers. The creature slowly turned its head toward me. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt locked shut in a vice. I could feel my face twisting into pure terror. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even move. I just stood there, staring at that thing. The pale, almost chalk-white monster that slowly lifted one of its limbs, and I saw 4 long, razor-sharp claws. I started stuttering, trying to catch my breath. I could see it was enjoying this. I could see it feeding on my fear. I could even see that it found it funny. It looked straight into my eyes. I felt those empty, milky white eyes boring into me, like they were sucking the soul out of me. It slowly lowered its limb without taking its eyes off me, and gently rested it on Olivia's chest. Then it dragged those claws slowly down her body, leaving behind 4 red lines soaking through her pajamas. Adrenaline ripped through my body, overpowering the fear. I screamed, "No!" and charged straight at it. I saw nothing but a quick movement, a blur, and a split second later, I felt weightlessness, then violent impact behind me. The hit came with no pain at all. I heard a crack, and then everything went black. I felt a dull pain in the back of my head, and my temples were throbbing with a splitting ache. I slowly peeled my face off the hard, cold floor panels of our bedroom. A warm, red stream ran down my cheek and chin. What the hell is happening, I thought, bracing my hands against the floor. A sharp, piercing pain shot through my ribs and folded me in half. Carefully, I lifted myself up and looked around. Through my blurred vision, I noticed a crimson puddle beneath my feet. Holding my ribs, I turned around and froze. Red stains shimmered across the empty bed. The sheets were torn apart, and deep, perfectly symmetrical 4 marks had been carved into the walls. The memory of what had happened struck my mind like lightning. "Olivia," I screamed, and a tearing pain in my stomach dropped me to one knee. Slowly, I got to my feet and staggered downstairs. My phone was sitting on the kitchen table. I lunged for it, ignoring another wave of pain. I punched in the number and held it to my ear, feeling the room spin around me. A voice came through the phone. 911, what's your emergency? "That thing took my wife, please help me, save her," I screamed into the phone as tears rolled down my cheek. "Sir, I need you to calm down and tell me your address. Where are you?" the dispatcher said firmly. My mind went blank. My stomach lurched into my throat and the world started spinning around me. "Sir, are you still there? I need your address. Hello?" I heard the voice in the distance. I moved my leg and realized I was lying on a soft mattress, covered by a blanket. In the background, I heard the steady beeping of a monitor. I slowly opened my eyes. I was in a hospital. "Well, good morning. You're finally awake. Do you know where you are?" a smiling nurse asked. "Where's Olivia? Where's my wife?" I asked, sitting up abruptly, and pain instantly stole the air from my lungs. The smile vanished from her face and was replaced with sympathy. "Easy, you have 3 broken ribs. Your wife isn't here. The police are here and they've been wanting to talk to you." "How long have I been here? Did they find my wife?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. The nurse stepped closer, her face suddenly serious, and said, "You need to lie back down. Your injuries are severe. You've been asleep for almost 2 days. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, getting to my feet and ripping the monitoring leads off my chest. The machine let out one long, continuous tone. The nurse grabbed my wrists and shouted, "What are you doing? Calm down and get back in bed." I tried to pull away. I couldn't be here. I had to find Olivia. Suddenly, the door opened and a middle-aged man stepped into the room. "Liam, sit down. We need to talk," he said, and his rough, low voice filled the room. There was something about him that made me obey without hesitation, and I sat back down in bed. The nurse stormed out of the room, clearly pissed. I looked up at him. He looked about 45, with a scruffy beard and tired, irritated eyes. He took a few steps towards the bed, and I caught the smell of cigarette smoke. "My name is Detective Carter," he said, pulling out a small notebook. Snapped out of my daze, I shouted, "You found my wife? What happened to Olivia?" "Calm down. We haven't found her yet. I need more details from you. The paramedics found you unconscious at the table with head trauma and broken ribs. What happened?" he asked calmly. A painful knot twisted in my stomach. "Please, find Olivia." I heard scratching, knocking on the window. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I wanted to grab her and get out. Then I saw it, on top of her. I saw a monster with huge claws, pale, white, and My voice caught in my throat, and my eyes started filling with tears. Detective Carter simply looked at me and waited for me to finish. I swallowed hard and continued. "It scratched her. Then it jumped on me, and when I came to, Olivia was gone. Then I woke up here. Please, for the love of God, save her. That thing took her." I said it, feeling like I was completely falling apart. I buried my face in my hands, and tears streamed uncontrollably down my arms. "We spoke to your neighbor. She says you talked 2 days ago. You woke her up early in the morning. Apparently you came back from your trip sooner than expected. You're wearing nothing but pajamas, and your knuckles were torn up. That matches your medical records." He paused, looked down at his notebook, and quietly read, "Fractured fingers, lacerations partially healed." Then he looked me straight in the eyes. "She says she never saw your wife. She also said you were acting very suspicious." I stared at him in disbelief. He suspects me. He thinks I did something to Olivia, I thought. And a violent shiver ran through my entire body. We came back together. Olivia was in the car. That thing followed us from Pineville. It started haunting her back there. We had to run, that's why. For Christ's sake, I was wearing pajamas, I shouted, wiping tears from my eyes. And the so-called boxer's fracture? Where'd that come from? What, Liam? You beat the shit out of a monster? He asked, raising his voice. Heat rushed through my entire head. I stood up and stepped toward him. You think I'd hurt my wife? I'm telling you the truth. Why are you here instead of looking for her? Why the hell are you wasting this time? That monster took Olivia. We need to find her. I screamed inches from his face. It didn't faze him in the slightest. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I felt a firm grip near my collarbone, and in his tired eyes, I saw something almost like sympathy. The faster we finish this, the faster I can get back to looking for your wife, he said calmly. Then he added, where did you get those injuries on your hands come from? I stumbled backward, grabbed the hospital bed railing, and sat down. I was hitting the car. I felt helpless. Olivia was unconscious. That monster did something to her. I couldn't wake her up. I kept punching the side of the car over and over and over again. The detective pulled out his radio. Can I get confirmation on dents along both sides of the vehicle? Then he looked back at me. All right, and your injuries, the ribs, the head? The memory of the attack flashed through my mind, and a cold sweat broke out across my body. I told you, the thing jumped on me. It threw me into the wall like a rag doll, I said, staring at the floor. We found blood in your bedroom. It's being tested. You're telling me that a monster made those holes in the wall and in the bedding? You're sure we won't find any tools? The marks are incredibly even and deep, almost like somebody used what the text described as sharpened garden rakes, he said, never taking his eyes off me. I felt helplessness building inside of me. That feeling had been growing nonstop ever since our goddamn trip. I had completely lost control of everything. I looked him straight in the eyes. Detective Carter, please. Believe me, I know I sound insane. I know it sounds impossible, but you have to help me. You have to find my wife. At that moment, a doctor walked into the room. Sorry, detective, but that's enough. The patient doesn't have the strength for an interrogation this intense. He needs rest. A nurse walked in right behind him. Keep my number. If you remember anything else, call me, Carter said, handing me his card. Standing in the doorway, he added, don't leave town. The doctor stepped closer and gently helped me back onto the bed, saying lie back, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the nurse injecting something into my IV. I flinched as a sharp wave of pain shot through my arm, from my ribs all the way into my lungs. Anger started building inside me. What the hell did you give me? I don't want to rest. I want to get out of here, I shouted. But then a warm, almost pleasant sensation started spreading through my body. It's just a sedative, the nurse said, emptying the syringe. I'm going to find my wife, I mumbled as I sank into the soft mattress. I opened my eyes and grabbed my aching head. Slowly, I sat up in the hospital bed, dull pain flowing through every inch of my body. I looked at the window. It was dark outside. I carefully sat on the edge of the bed, my head pounding like the worst hangover of my life. I can't sit here forever. I have to do something, no matter what, I thought as I got to my feet. I slipped the pulse monitor off my finger and ripped the IV out of my arm. Staggering, I walked to the door and slowly opened it. Dim light filled the hallway. Absolute silence, broken only by distant coughing and the soft sounds of hospital machines. I stepped out slowly, keeping one hand against the wall for support. Every step sent stabbing pain through my broken ribs. Suddenly, behind me, I heard the monitor in my room. It went completely insane. The alarm wailed, echoing through the dark hallways. A sudden rush of adrenaline hit me, and for a moment, the pain eased. I picked up the pace. Halfway down the hallway, I spotted a door. I walked closer and opened it, a stairwell. I looked at the floor sign, 3rd floor. I grabbed the railing and started moving down as fast as I could. 2nd floor, 1st floor, I whispered, reading the signs as sweat rolled down my forehead. I opened the door and carefully peeked into the hallway. Empty. I moved slowly, pressed against the wall, and hid behind a vending machine. Only the reception desk left. My stomach twisted into knots. If they see me there, there's no way I'm outrunning anybody in this condition. I slowly leaned my head out. Nobody. I started moving as fast as I could towards the exit. I passed through the automatic doors and felt the cool night air hit my face. The night was surprisingly warm. Filled with relief and hope, I quickened my pace. Every step my shoes took against the concrete sent a brutal, piercing pain through my body. I ignored it. It was a small price to pay if it meant finding the woman I loved. The streets were almost completely silent, interrupted only now and then by a passing car. Then suddenly, from a bus stop across the street, I heard a muffled voice. Hello? There's some guy in hospital clothes running down the streets. I'm over by... No. I was so close, I thought, pushing myself even harder. I stumbled the rest of the way home, taking side streets, adding mile after painful mile. I was completely out of it, barely conscious. I stepped onto our driveway and looked up at the house. Yellow police tape blocked off the property. I ducked under it, walked to the front door, grabbed the handle. Of course they've locked it, I thought, yanking the handle with all of my strength. You're gonna hurt yourself. A low, familiar voice came from behind me. Slowly, I turned around, leaning my back against the door. Then I slid down and collapsed onto the ground. Detective Carter was standing in the driveway. Coming here was stupid. Did you seriously think the hospital wouldn't call us when a patient escaped? And even if they didn't, come on, man. You're running around in a hospital gown with your balls hanging out. He laughed. You caused such a scene that within 30 minutes of your escape, we got 4 more calls about you. I said nothing. I didn't have the strength. I just sat there, barely catching my breath while pain radiated from my stomach into my chest and spine. Carter stepped closer. Tell me something, Liam. Where were you trying to go? Because I sure as hell don't believe you came here to stay home. I slowly raised my head. Pineville, Kentucky. He frowned. For what? That's almost 300 miles. They know something, I said, flinching with every word. Carter walked to the front door. He pulled out a key, unlocked it, opened it. I fell backward and slammed the back of my head against the floor. Darkness flooded my vision. I felt myself slipping away. Then I felt a hand grabbing me. We'll see. Get changed and get in the car, he said, hauling me to my feet. Half conscious, I walked inside, changed clothes, and climbed into the car. Detective Carter started the engine and we drove. Maybe 2 miles. Then the exhaustion finally caught up with me. I sank into the soft leather seat and the vibration of the moving car knocked me out almost instantly. Wake up, we're almost there. I heard Carter's voice. I opened my eyes and immediately squinted as bright sunlight stabbed into them. I wiped the drool from my mouth, then instinctively glanced sideways, hoping Carter hadn't seen. What now? He asked. We need to drive to the edge of town. There should be a old woman's house there. She knows something. He looked at me. What do you mean she knows something? Why are you so sure? I looked back at him. She rented us the cabin. She warned us not to arrive after dark. I called her after we got home and she told me she was sorry, but it was already too late. Carter glanced at me uneasily. Too late for what? My stomach tightened. We're here, right there, I said, pointing toward Mrs. Sophia's property. Carter pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. Wait here. He stepped down. He was halfway to the house when suddenly I saw movement. A dog came charging straight at him. I grabbed the handle and adrenaline exploded through my body. I took off running toward the woods, holding my ribs. Tears streamed down my face. Every step made my vision blur. I was close. I could feel it. Olivia had to be in that goddamn cabin. I'll get her out. I'll figure something out. I'll save her. Then suddenly, I tripped over a branch. The pain was beyond anything I'd ever felt. It drove all the air out of my lungs. I rolled on the ground, clutching my ribs, sobbing. I had to take this route. If I'd gone down the main trail, Carter would have caught me, and God knows we'd probably be heading back to Cincinnati by now. I'm close. I have to get up, I thought. I planted my hands against the dirt, slowly pushed myself upright, wiped the sand from my face. I took one step forward and froze. I felt myself piss down my pants, the warmth running all the way to my ankles. Behind me, I heard it. A long, slow, metallic scraping sound against wood. There's something wrong with my wife's new friend. I find it hard to put into words when and how this nightmare started. I moved with my wife Sarah to the other end of the country, which took a major toll on our social life as well as our marriage. God, I wish I hadn't accepted this job in the first place. We were the social sort. She worked at a law firm and I was a welder. Out of the blue, I got an offer to relocate and resettle at another site for 3 times my income. After discussing it with Sarah, we decided that I would take the job and she would find whatever work she could around here. Everything was okay for the first few months, but life started to get dull. This place is somewhat small, and there isn't really much to do around here that doesn't become boring after a while. The lack of novelty took a toll on our marriage. I began to dread coming home from work and would take extra shifts just to delay going back to the house as much as possible. Every day, I would sit for an hour in my truck on a secluded part of the road, just smoking and pondering. When I did come home, I prayed that she would be asleep so that I wouldn't have to deal with her cold shoulder and snarky remarks. And I thought that was bad. A few months ago, we talked, and she decided to join some artsy club that one of her friends from work goes to. I was happy that this would finally get her out of the house and maybe calm her down for the time being. How I wish things were like before. How I wish we never came here. So, she joined this club. At first, she was genuinely looking happy, and I was glad that she managed to find some friends. She became happier and happier until she started becoming more dismissive and secretive about what they were doing. One time I asked, "Hey, what do you actually do?" And she just gave me this angry, bitter look before suddenly changing her mood and saying, "I will sign you up and you will see." This caught me off guard. From that point, she went back to her happy, warm self. At least so I thought. She would call me at work and ask about my day, which she hadn't done in years. I would come home to large, well-made dinners. My favorite movies would be on TV. I would think about a gift for my birthday, and she would give me the exact thing I had imagined without me ever telling her. Suddenly, my life turned from hell to heaven for seemingly no reason. I would still stop by the deserted road only to cry tears of joy and wonder what the hell had happened. Not that I was offended or angry that I had. Her intimacy also became something out of this world. I took a major cut to my pay so that I could spend more time with her. I swear, each day I came home, she was more and more beautiful. And those weren't subtle changes either. One day, her hair would suddenly grow and turn lush and strong. The next, I swear, she was thinner and even more muscular. She spent a lot of time in her study making strange figurines for our art club. They looked dark, with strange ruins carved into them. Supposedly, it was for some art world they were building. At least, that's the core of the project. I don't know what material she used to make those figurines, but my head started to feel strange whenever I spent time in the house. I had this weird feeling as if they were looking at me. Sometimes I would hear faint whispers. Sometimes they would somehow move from one spot to another, even though I was alone in the house and never touched them. My world became perfect until it all came crashing down a week ago. One day, I grabbed her hand and asked what had happened. I kept telling her how happy I was and how much our life had improved. She just smiled and said, "Maybe it's time for you to meet my friend, Thilia." The name felt somehow off. I agreed and suggested we go out somewhere. But Sarah insisted that she come by our house for dinner, as she was supposedly an extremely private person. I didn't think much of it at the time. How stupid of me. So we scheduled the dinner for Friday night at midnight, which for whatever reason didn't strike me as odd. Someone coming to our house in the dead of night for dinner should have alarmed me, but I was so invested in my happiness that I had lost all sense. Friday came and Sarah wouldn't let me anywhere near the kitchen. I mean, nowhere near. I spent the entire day out of the house. I had taken the day off, no less. And Sarah just gave me this disturbing smile and said, "I will get everything ready. You go to town and have fun." No matter how hard I pushed, she wanted me out of the house. Again, I was too dumb to realize it. I went to bars and enjoyed myself like a child with near infinite money. I came home just before midnight, and Sarah opened the door for me. My jaw dropped. She looked at least 20 years younger. I don't mean she was well dressed or wearing good makeup, no. It looked like her aging had somehow reversed. Something made me shiver with unease. "Come in, she's almost here," she nearly screamed with excitement. The house was arranged like we were having a romantic party. She had flowers delivered, incense sticks were all lit around, and the dinner table was filled to the brim with food. One small detail struck me among all this abnormality. Sarah had a missing tooth that was suddenly there again. Before I could press her for answers, someone gently tapped on the front door. There was no car outside, and we lived far away from any public transportation. "She's here." Sarah jumped with excitement and dragged me to the door. The moment she opened that door, I felt sick. That gut-wrenching feeling when everything appears normal, but you know deep down something is very, very wrong. "Thilia, welcome," Sarah said with a wide smile. The woman looked beautiful. Unnaturally beautiful. I couldn't imagine anyone more appealing to the eye. "Hello, Sarah," she said while gazing at me. Now I know her eyes were light blue when she came in. "Can I come in?" she asked in a charming, feminine voice. I muttered, "Of course," and noticed her wide smile as she stepped inside. At that moment, everything around me seemed to dull, like I was severely intoxicated. We sat down at the dinner table, and Sarah, for some reason, sat beside her instead of me. My knees shook. There was something very vile and off-putting about this woman. She wore a strange, ornate red dress with black jewelry set with what looked like a priceless gems. Her hair was the darkest I had ever seen, perfectly kept. She barely paid attention to Sarah, focusing instead on me, which made me uncomfortable. Sarah placed the food in front of us in covered serving trays that we didn't own before. She lifted the metal covers, revealing an exquisite dish made from some kind of meat and rare mushrooms. My eyes widened. Sarah never cooked red meat, and this was far beyond her abilities. It looked like something prepared by the world's best chefs. The strong, sweet, earthly aroma hit me immediately. Sarah and Thilia stared at the meat with almost ravenous expressions before devouring it. They ate as if they hadn't eaten in days. My hand shook as I placed a piece of meat into my mouth. The texture was incredible. The taste unlike anything I had ever experienced. "How is it, honey?" Sarah asked, almost mockingly. "It's lovely," I muttered, and they both laughed. Even though it tasted incredible, I couldn't swallow a single bite. It was as if my body refused to let me. I chewed and chewed, then discreetly spat it out whenever they weren't looking. It felt wrong. They ate like animals. Their portions dwarfed mine. They were like hungry lions, not human beings. I felt anxious and out of place. Every part of me was telling me to run, even though we were supposedly having a nice time. After they finished, Sarah said, "We should get more meat next time." That sounded wrong. She had barely touched meat for years. Thilia produced a bottle of wine, which Sarah opened and poured. She gestured for us to move to the living room and sit by the fireplace. To my surprise, the armchairs were gone, leaving only the sofa. She poured 3 glasses of a dense, almost oily red wine. Now I swear Thilia's eyes were dark green. Her pupils didn't react to light at all, as if they were decorative. They drank quickly and pressured me to do the same. The wine didn't taste like wine. It was extremely sweet, unlike anything I had ever had. After that, I phased in and out of consciousness. I remembered nothing else from that night, except that Thilia gave me one of her black rings, which I cannot remove no matter what I do. I woke up the next morning in searing pain. My entire body felt like it was filled with burning coals. I could barely make it to the bathroom. No matter how much I demanded answers, Sarah wouldn't tell me what had happened. I never fully recovered. I grow weaker each day. I have constant nightmares, and I always see that woman in the corner of my vision. I hear voices in my head taunting me, telling me I'm going to hell, asking if I enjoyed my dinner. I had bite marks all over my body. They were deep and bloodied, but Sarah brushed them off. Each night I suffer from sleep paralysis. Finally, Sarah went out again. It took all my strength to reach the taxi station and get to a private hospital in another town. The strangest thing is that the doctors found no traces of drugs, alcohol, or any major injuries. They said they had never seen a case like mine. I tried to show them the bite marks, but they couldn't see them. My blood test showed that I am as healthy as a 90-year-old man, and I seem to be aging rapidly. This damn ring won't come off. 3 blades broke when they tried to cut it. The doctors think I'm a schizophrenic, and I am struggling to convince them otherwise. I swear some of the nurses are her. I recognize those eyes, even behind the masks. One of them smiled at me today. Her eyes were not the same color as yesterday, and I know the ring was on my other hand when I fell asleep last time. Sarah hasn't called me at all. Maybe she will get another chance to undo her wasted life, as she called it. She denied ever being married to me when the hospital called.